Before watching this heartbreaking story, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss the most emotional celebrity stories that shaped Hollywood. Let's dive in. Understanding Dean Martin's world, a father's hidden pain. Before we tell you the story of the day that changed Dean Martin forever, you need to understand who he really was, beyond the spotlight, the martinis, and the smooth voice that made millions fall in love with him. Dean Martin wasn't just an entertainer. He was a man who loved deeply, laughed loudly, and hurt silently. The public saw the confident crooner who performed alongside Frank Sinatra, the actor who starred in Hollywood's greatest films, the host whose talk show became legendary. But behind closed doors, Dean Martin was a father fighting a battle that no amount of success could win. He was devoted to his children. Dean loved his kids with a fierce protection that sometimes pushed them away. He struggled with perfectionism. He expected the best from everyone around him, including his own family. He hid his emotions. The man who made the world laugh rarely showed the world when he was breaking inside. He feared losing control. In an industry built on image, Dean Martin held onto his family like the last real thing in his life. This is the story of what happens when that control slips away. The first 45 seconds of this story must grab your heart and never let go. The morning of December 25, 1987, started like any other Christmas morning in Beverly Hills. Decorated trees stood in mansions. Families gathered around warm fires. Children opened presents with joy and laughter. But in one of Hollywood's most famous homes, silence hung like a funeral shroud. Dean Martin, the man who'd spent 70 years making the world smile, sat alone by his window. His eyes were empty. His heart was shattered. His only son was gone. The shocking truth, Dino Jr., Dean's beloved 19-year-old son, had died in a military plane crash just days before. And in a twist of fate more cruel than any Hollywood script, the grieving father would have to face the world, face the cameras, and somehow find the strength to bury the only piece of his soul he truly loved. Why this matters? This wasn't just about a celebrity losing a child. This was about a man whose entire identity was built on happiness, forced to live the world's worst nightmare in front of millions of eyes. Older audiences connect deeply with stories about parents and children. They understand the sacrifice, the dreams, and the heartbreak. So let's build this story slowly and clearly. Dean Martin's full name was Dino Paul Crosetti. He was born in Steubenville, Ohio, in 1917 to Italian immigrant parents. His father was a barber. His mother was a dreamer. From poverty and struggle, Dean fought his way to become one of the most famous men in the world. By 1950, Dean had everything: money, fame, respect, and a beautiful wife named Dorothy. When Dino Jr. was born on November 17, 1950, Dean believed he'd finally achieved the one thing that mattered more than any Oscar or Grammy: a son who would carry his legacy. But Dean was a complicated man. He was strict, demanding, and deeply involved in every aspect of his son's life. He wanted Dino Jr. to understand the value of hard work. He wanted him to learn discipline. He wanted him to be better than Dean himself had been. Dino Jr. grew up watching his father perform. He saw the standing ovations. He heard the crowds chanting, "Dean! Dean!" He watched his father drink, laugh, and charm everyone around him. But he also saw something else: the loneliness that came with being Dean Martin's son. By the time Dino Jr. turned 18, he'd made a decision. He didn't want to follow in his father's footsteps. He didn't want to be an entertainer. He didn't want the spotlight. Instead, he joined the Air Force. For Dean Martin, this was the first crack in his carefully controlled world. Why this matters? Dean had planned his son's entire future. But Dino Jr. wanted to write his own story. This tension would define everything that came next. This is where we make the audience feel the pain. Where we show how love sometimes isn't enough to bridge the gap between two people. Dean Martin struggled deeply with his son's choice to join the Air Force. Not because he was unsupportive of the military, but because he was losing control. His son was choosing a different path. A dangerous path. The two men had a complicated relationship filled with love and unspoken words. Dean wanted to call every day, but pride held him back. Dino Jr. wanted to prove himself independent, but he still looked for his father's approval in everything he did. In letters and occasional phone calls, they tried to connect. But the distance between a proud father and a determined son is sometimes harder to cross than any ocean. "Dad, I'm doing well here," Dino Jr. would say, hoping for pride in his father's voice. "That's good, son," Dean would respond, his voice controlled, never quite expressing the fear that ate at him every single day. Because Dean Martin knew something about mortality. He'd lost friends. He'd seen careers destroyed. He'd witnessed how quickly life could change. And his son was flying dangerous missions in military jets. By 1987, Dino Jr. was a radar officer in the U.S. Air Force. He flew in an F-4 Phantom jet as part of military training exercises. It was December, just before Christmas, the holiday season when families were supposed to be together. Dean had planned a special Christmas. He'd arranged time off from his work. He'd invited Dino Jr. to come home. He wanted to reconnect. He wanted to bridge the gap that had grown between them. But Dino Jr. had one more training flight scheduled. One more mission. One more day. The weight of the moment **** that training flight would be the last thing Dino Jr. ever did. This is where we deliver the most painful truth. Where the audience understands what it means to lose everything in a single moment. ***. On March 21, 1987, an F-4 Phantom jet crashed near Monterey, California. The plane went down during a routine training exercise. Both the pilot and the radar officer were killed instantly. The radar officer was Dino Jr., Dean Martin's only son. The boy who'd been born to give his father immortality. The young man who was supposed to outlive the legend. The military found Dean first. Officers in dress uniforms appeared at his home. They stood at his door with words that no father should ever hear. "We're sorry for your loss." Dean Martin, 70 years old, the man who'd entertained millions, who'd made the world laugh, who'd built an empire on charm and confidence, collapsed. For the first time in his public life, nobody saw Dean Martin smile. Nobody heard him make a joke. Nobody witnessed the performed version of this man who'd hidden his true self for decades. The funeral was scheduled for December. The same December when he'd hoped to reconnect with his son. The same December when families gathered around trees and exchanged gifts. Instead, Dean Martin prepared to bury his heart. The cruel irony ***, the man who'd built his career on the motto "You're nobody till somebody loves you" now faced a love so deep, so absolute, that losing it felt like losing his ability to breathe. The ending must leave the audience forever changed. Must show what happens when a man's mask finally cracks in front of the world. The funeral was held at Westwood Village Memorial Park on December 28, 1987. Hollywood's elite arrived in black cars. The same faces that had laughed at Dean's jokes sat in silence. The same people who'd applauded his performances now watched him grieve. But Dean Martin didn't give a performance this time. He arrived dressed in black, his face aged by a grief so raw that it looked like he'd aged 20 years in a few days. His eyes were red from crying. His hands trembled. The smooth crooner, the confident entertainer, the man who controlled every moment of his life, had no control over this. As they lowered the small wooden casket into the ground, Dean Martin stood motionless. His ex-wife Dorothy stood beside him. His other children stood nearby. But nothing could protect him from this moment. Dean didn't speak. He didn't make light of the situation. He didn't do what Dean Martin had always done, turn pain into entertainment. Instead, he simply broke. The man who'd sung That's Amore with joy in his voice now faced a reality that was the opposite of amore. This was heartbreak in its purest form. This was a father discovering that success, money, and fame meant absolutely nothing when you lost the person who mattered most. Witnesses at the funeral said something changed in Dean Martin that day. The light that had always been there, the light that made him legendary, began to fade. The aftermath ***. Dean continued working. He continued making appearances. But colleagues and friends noticed he was different. The jokes became emptier. The laughter sounded forced. The man was still performing, but his heart wasn't in it anymore. Dean Martin lived for 10 more years after Dino Jr.'s death. But in many ways, he died that December day at his son's funeral. The universal truth this story teaches us ***. This isn't just Dean Martin's story. This is a story about what happens when we take for granted the people we love. It's about the danger of letting pride, control, and perfectionism create distance with the people who matter most. How many of us are like Dean, waiting for the perfect moment to tell our children we're proud? How many of us are waiting to bridge gaps that grow wider every single day? How many of us are performing our lives instead of truly living them? Dean Martin taught the world how to laugh. But perhaps his greatest lesson came in his grief, showing us that sometimes the most important things we can do for the people we love is to be truly honest, to break down our walls, to say the things that matter before it's too late. Dino Jr. never heard his father say, "I'm proud of you for making your own choices." He never heard Dean admit that the distance between them hurt him. He never knew that beneath the joker and the entertainer was a father who loved him more than anything. And that's the lesson we all must learn from this story ***. Don't wait. Don't perform. Don't hide behind jokes when your loved ones need your truth. Because one day, someone you love might not come home. And all the success in the world won't bring them back. Dean Martin proved this to us, not through his laughter, but through his tears. Final message. If this story of Dean Martin's heartbreak moved you, if you felt the weight of a father's love and loss, then please do two things for us right now. First, like this video ***, show us that stories about real emotions, real pain, and real human struggle matter to you. Second, subscribe to our channel ***, because we bring you these incredible stories of celebrities who faced life's greatest challenges. Stories that teach us about ourselves. Stories that remind us what it means to be human. In the comments below, share your own story. Have you ever lost someone who mattered? Have you ever had unfinished business with someone you loved? Your story could inspire millions. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring about stories that matter. We'll see you in the next video. Don't miss out. Subscribe now. And remember, tell the people you love how much they mean to you. Today. Before it's too late. ***.